morning. It is still morning, right? Yeah, okay. What time zone am I in? So, spoiler alert, since it's a question, can DevOps culture help avoid burnout? Obviously, I think the answer is yes, or it would be kind of a waste of time to come here. That said, if you do it wrong, it can actually make it worse, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. So, agenda, not going to read you the words, but that's what we're going to go through today. Normally I do pretty technical talks, but this one's very much not, and so there will be some disclaimers and so forth. A little bit about me. So I actually don't normally put like military service on there, not because I'm in any way ashamed of it, but because it was like 60 pounds ago. Yeah. But I also put it up there so that you understand that I come from a background where things like burnout and things are like, yeah, no, suck it up, get up the hill, sunshine. So this was actually a bit of a learning journey for me to take burnout seriously and start talking about it. Now, there's one of the cardinal rules of getting on stage and talking to people about something is you're supposed to put firm, have a firm stand on things. This is what I believe. Even if it's not really, okay, I'm a little softer afterwards. This is an exception. Okay, because I want to be clear about something. There's something that was not in my bio. I am not a mental health professional. Okay, I'm not any kind of health professional. Okay, I'm not a psychologist, anything like that. But I've done a bunch of research because it's something that affected me and some close friends personally. And I think it's important, and I think it's important that we share it. Okay. Also, as I already kind of mentioned, there are ways that you can do the DevOps that could make this significantly worse. So, we want to say that, like any kind of culture change, it can be better or it can be worse. So if that's the case, if you shouldn't believe me, if, none of this is true, why am I here? As I mentioned, it came down a little bit to why not me. I saw a gentleman by the name of John Willis give a talk on this subject, and it was really like, wow, okay, I didn't know about that research. I didn't know about those causes, et cetera. It really kind of helped me. And so I asked John, I said, hey, do you mind if I basically steal your material? He said, please feel free, because he stole it. And that's the point, is to get us talking about these things and understand them, and there's no stigma, it's just the real thing. And so this was his question to me, and it's my question to you. So my hope here today, and the goal of this talk, is that you understand this and see this as an important thing, whether it's affected you personally or coworkers or friends or family or what have you, and that we really kind of understand more about what it is and what to do about it. So why should we worry about this at all? And there's like managers in the room or for yourself or what have you. A lot of people will be like I said, military, suck it up, sunshine. So what are some real solid reasons of why to worry about this? So I don't know if this qualifies as the definition of real solid, but part of me says because we can. People don't have to suffer, and so if we have ways to make it so people don't suffer, let's take advantage of those ways, right? But believe it or not, there's actually a lot of good business reasons too. This is one of my favorite blogs out there talking about team effectiveness, and it's often used in different contexts than this. But basically what happened is Google went out and they said, we want to try to find out what our highest performing teams have in common. What are the things that are common among these teams that make them so good so that we can clone it and we can produce it and what have you. They expected things like, really good DBAs or polyglot, or they really know the build system, or they know Borg, or whatever it was. And it came out that psychological safety was by far the number one. Where the person on the team could say, yeah, I want to try this, it might not work. And then if it didn't work, there's no harm, no foul, we're good. We're safe. Or, yeah, I don't like the way you're doing that, or the way to discuss things, and so forth. That having that fairness and the safety was actually their number one thing. It wasn't how good somebody is at Golang. Also, another business thing. Burnout's not just negative emotions, it's not feeling positive. If you're not feeling positive at work, you're probably not contributing very well. This is from a couple years old State of DevOps report People with these higher performing teams are more likely to exceed profitability, market share, productivity goals, higher market cap, et cetera. And so again, towards the end of the talk, I'm going to give some resources of where people can learn, et cetera. There's training you can go to. If you're a manager, you can training you can pay for your teams. There is actually ROI to this. Now, before I can do this, I have to do this. And I apologize. But the folks who came up with the word DevOps, so Andrew Clay Schaefer sent out a tweet, and then Patrick Dubois picked it up and started DevOps Days. They actively refuse to define DevOps for good reasons, but I need you to know what I mean by it. So this is my definition of DevOps. I don't do this so that you should adopt it. I do this so you know what I mean when I say this. And so, you can't do DevOps. DevOps isn't automation. It's not monitoring. It's not scaling. It's not that. It's a culture of everybody working together. The old product team, you build it, you own it kind of stuff. And so I really do want to stress that what I'm talking about here today is the culture of DevOps. But some of what you're going to hear is going to assume continuous delivery. Okay, so what is burnout? Lots of different definitions. This is what dictionary is this? Merriam-Webster. I'm not talking about I worked in the garden all weekend and I'm really tired, exhaustion, physical exhaustion. I do really mean mental burnout. It's a medical condition. The best resource I found about this is this book right here, and it's what John Willis stole from, and it's what I'm going to steal from for most of this talk, called The Truth About Burnout, written by actual medical professionals, and it's about organizational stress and burnout, and I highly recommend it. There's 3 things they measure when they call the dimensions of burnout. The first one is just exhaustion. I'm just tired all the time. That's a real thing. Cynicism. When I was suffering from burnout in my last job, this was where it really came out for me. It's like, it doesn't matter what we do. It's not going to work. Just very, very cynical. And then the one that actually surprises a lot of people is professional efficacy. Do I feel like I'm doing a good job? Do I feel like I'm contributing? Or, kind of a little bit with the cynical part, but, no matter what I do, it's not going to matter anyway. I suck. I'm not good. That kind of things. So that's what they measure when they talk about burnout. Those are the dimensions of burnout. So let's talk about some causes. What's interesting to say is that they found in their research, and it certainly plays true for me, that it wasn't about specific conditions. It wasn't about this condition will cause burnout 90% of the time or whatever. It was that this person does not thrive under these conditions. That person might. Okay, so the key word here is mismatch. So it was that, again, that I have a job and I have a thing and I'm supposed to do it, but that doesn't meet with what works for me personally. And so they had 6 common areas of these. I'm going to go through each of these a little bit, but work overload, lack of control, insufficient reward, these probably aren't going to surprise anybody. Those are their 6 common areas of mismatch. I think a true DevOps culture, a true, you build it, you run it, shared ownership, all of that, can help with many of these and not so much with others. So, roughly speaking, breakdown of communication, big time, insufficient reward, not so much. And I'll go through them, like I said. So, first one, work overload. How does the DevOps culture help this? Well, first off, work is more visible. So it's not that someone's doing all these things on the weekends that nobody knows about. If you're really a team, everybody sees it. So there's more load sharing. Less deploy marathons, I hope. So, not staying up all night Friday night. So if you're doing real continuous delivery, you should be able to just click a button right now if you wanted to. But what I'm going to do here is good and green and bad and red. Understand that some orgs will see this as cost savings. There will be people that say, hey, let's do the DevOps because it's no ops, and now we don't have to pay those IT operations people because they're expensive. No, sorry. Actually, doing some of the things that enable this technically, things like real continuous integration with feature flags, et cetera, might actually be more work. And so beware. This is where I said sometimes this culture change can be opposite of what you want. So one thing I use a lot to talk about the mismatch in this particular case is my own personal example. I spend a little bit of time on airplanes, and I hate airports. But for the most part, travel doesn't bother me. Time zones take a little bit. I was in Singapore last week. I'll be in Oslo in a couple of weeks. Time zones are hard, but this is fine with me. It might kill you. Just having a discussion with somebody backstage who doesn't like TSA and what have you, they would get burnt out if they had to do this. For me, this works. For you, it might not. And that's what I mean by mismatch. So don't put what works for you on somebody else, etc. The next one down is lack of control. If you don't control what you're doing, it's really, really, really easy to get burnt out. And so in a true DevOps culture, the teams are ultimately responsible for the decisions. And decisions aren't just the right technology and tools, although that's certainly a big part of it. I couldn't agree with Matthew's thing, by the way, anymore about being more ubiquitous. But if we're going to do this feature, is business going to go up and down? It went up, great, let's do more of that. It went down, let's stop that. And you can't do that if you don't have control, if you don't decide what's being done. And I do mean the people developing it have the control. So, a DevOps team creating the automation for everybody else to use is actually taking control away, not giving them control on what their pipeline should look like and so forth. This is number one of happy to argue about it in open spaces. There'll be more. So insufficient reward is another cause. Now, I have to say, I don't think this DevOps has anything to do with this. Yes, DevOps Engineer, which I hate, is the second hottest job on Glassdoor right now, so I won't say that. But the truth is, at the income range of most people in this room, Harvard Business Review has done a study, a bunch of people did other studies, it actually really doesn't make that much difference for burnout. Don't get me wrong, I want a nice car, but okay. And so, truthfully, it's just not a driving force for us anymore. It really is about better software. I'm weird, I have to always try to get at least Star Wars or Star Trek in everything, so there you go. Yeah. This is the big one to me. Breakdown of communication. If anyone's ever done like Agile 101 training, you've probably seen this. Okay? So, the walls there are communication walls. If I have to do the release and operate the thing, but I don't have any idea how it works or why we even created it to begin with, it's not going to be effective. And I'm going to get burnt out because I'm going to be like, it's my job to, wait, this broken, I have to fix it? Wait, what? Okay, I don't even know how because there's no communication. So, when you have a product team instead of a project team, everyone's there's the same team. So some former colleagues of mine wrote a book called Continuous Delivery. And I can tell you that the project they were on at my company, ThoughtWorks, if that team had had somebody who knew a lot about Solaris on it, that book would not exist. Because there's some things they did wrong that they wouldn't have done wrong. And we can go into a detailed letter. But pairs with different skill sets are common. If the developer had been paired with somebody on Solaris, it's not that the Solaris admin had to learn Java, but they would have said, whoa, don't do that. It's going to be bad. But there wasn't somebody there, and so it was bad. I'm a big fan of swarming. So the GoCD team, and thank you, Maddie, for pretending to be GoCD for the sponsor pitch. The GoCD team is about 12 people. And if they get a particularly hairy issue, they all gather around a big old screen and work on it together. Part of the psychological safety, blameless retrospectives. I don't think there's any such thing as human error. There is such a thing as not having the automation in place to stop somebody from typing the thing that brought down the system. Okay, but be careful if you start to get to what, root cause, which is another fairly evil term. And again, no such thing as a DevOps team. Sorry. Yeah. Absence of fairness. Yeah. My background is in operations. My background is somebody would hand me the thing, and I had to run it, and when it broke, not if, when, it was my phone that rang, and I had to go fix it. And this was back in the days of physical points of presence when I worked for an ISP, and so that meant driving 3 hours from Seattle to Spokane to go click a button to reboot a server because I didn't know what else to do, because I didn't know anything about their software. Okay, got a little burnt out, by the way. I love that graphic, and I also hate it because it's too true. So, what I think of as a DevOps culture is the whole you build it, you run it, which is a quote that came from the CTO of Amazon in 2006. A lot of times it's used in the context of you build it, you run it, so I don't have to pay ops teams or what have you. No, if you read the whole context, and it's out there, I should have put a link on here. The context was because now you're closer to the customer, and you can make real decisions, and you have control, and it's fair, and if it breaks, you're the one that gets it, and so forth. Because everyone's responsible for quality. There are models now where you can earn the right to have SRE teams or whatever run your stuff, but at first, it's the dev team. If it breaks at 3 a.m., the dev team is the one that gets called, not the person who got handed it. Also, everyone's measured the same way. We have these things where we have the people who are responsible for the system, and they're measured on things like uptime, while the people who are developing the system are measured on, horrible, awful things like feature velocity. And there's a mismatch. So, on the GoCD team, our two primary measurements are open source adoption and are people using a feature called Elastic Agents, which basically means you're using cloud. And so to us, that's a thing. Whether you're in marketing, sales, development, me as an evangelist, this is what we're measured on. If these things go up, we did good. If they go down, we did bad. The whole team. Okay, so everybody goes to the release party. I've had these before where I showed up at Friday at 4 o'clock for my marathon to do the deploy while the dev team went off and had a release party while I then deployed their crap that didn't work. Yeah. So the key takeaway here is metrics drive behaviors. Okay, so I don't care what metric you make up. If there's something you can measure and you say this is what I'm going to measure you on, humans are really good about making those numbers look good. If my bonus is based on this, I'm gonna do it. Might not actually work, but I'm gonna do it. The last one is conflicting values. And I have to admit, the first time I'm like, well, what does this mean? And they honestly mean in the broadest possible context. So I'm former military and so forth. If I worked for an organization that was really anti-military, that would not make me happy. It's that kind of stuff. At ThoughtWorks, for example, we have this thing called Pillar 3, advocate passionately for social and economic justice. We're close to 40% women in technical positions. That is hard work. That is not easy hiring, et cetera. It's important to us. We do it. It's extra effort. If it wasn't important to you, please don't give me a resume, because I'm not going to hire you. And because if I did, you'd be miserable. And that's what I mean by absence of, or the mismatch of conflicting values here. Again, it's not that one's right or wrong, but it's important that you're working in a team and an organization that has shared values. Okay. So the reminder is that it's about you. It's the mismatch. Okay. Again, it's not that what makes me happy or what makes me burnt out is the same for you by any stretch. It's about you. So some things that you can do to help this. First off, and I'm incredibly biased. I've been working for a continuous delivery vendor for the better part of 10 years. But it really does help. This is from the State of DevOps report. If anyone's not familiar with it, the new one came out about a month ago. Go ahead, download it. I'll wait. No, kidding. It actually is really good, and it's been peer-reviewed to say that the math's valid and that it's not a weighted survey, et cetera. And some of the things they came up with continuous delivery is, we're adding, version control and test automation and all these things. But what's interesting is burnout and org culture actually were highly affected as much as change failure and IT performance. You're like, wow, when we have these solid practices in there, when it's not painful, when I can spend my time innovating instead of fixing the build, we're happier. Weird. Also, pay attention to how you feel. I didn't do this. I was like, I'm in a job that a lot of people would consider a career goal type job. I feel like I'm miserable, but it must just be because, I don't know. So there's this thing out there called the Maslach Burnout Inventory. Christine Maslach is one of the authors of that book. You can go take this. You have to pay for it, but it's cheap. And it measures those three metrics I talked about earlier. Your exhaustion, cynicism, and professional efficacy. And when I tried to put my head back in my previous job, because believe it or not, my job now would be much higher on this. And one of my biggest things was this one at the bottom. It felt like no matter what I did, because of the organizational structure, I just wasn't doing a good job. My reviews were all great. I got good, good bonuses and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't feel like I was doing a good job, and I made everybody around me miserable. Ask my ex-wife, who didn't have that part of the title at the time. I was no fun to be around, and it really came down to I just didn't feel like I was doing a good job, and that pissed me off, if you'll excuse the saying. So increase your self-awareness. Another thing we're just talking about in the, what do you guys say, green room that's not green? In the back, is what we tend to do as humans is focus on the negative a lot, especially when it has to do with us. Okay, so like y'all have the opportunity to go in and rate this talk and da-da-da-da. And what the human nature is to do is to focus on the one bad thing. Oops. Okay, well, that said that was stupid, and then it went away. Because it's just human nature, right? And so we might get all this positive feedback. And like I said with my previous job, I got good reviews, I got raises, I got those kinds of things. But I didn't feel effective, and so that's what I would internalize. So just becoming aware of that actually can help you a lot. Anybody heard of Dunning-Kruger? So Dunning-Kruger is a study, oh my gosh, I don't remember where this came out of. It's from 1999. I don't remember what the school was that they were at. And basically what they did is there was a person who robbed a bank. And he was arrested very shortly thereafter because they had really good pictures of him. And they were interviewing him, and they said, and he was like, how did you know it was me? He goes, I'll admit to it. I just need you to tell me how you knew it was me because I can't figure it out. And they're like, what are you talking about? You didn't wear a disguise or whatever, or anything. But I rubbed lemon juice on my face. It's like, wait, what? Yeah, like invisible ink. So, when you write with lemon juice, you can't see it. I rubbed lemon juice on my face. How did you see me? This was a person who was not a high IQ, who thought he was a genius. And so they did this study, and they found out that the highest performers, the people who know the most, and these are all really loaded terms and very privileged terms, the people who know the most think they know the least. Because they're like, oh, there's a lot here I don't know. Actually, there was one of the DevOps days was taking talks, and on the bottom it said, okay, where are you on this scale of how much you know about DevOps? And the first one was, I don't know anything, and then it was a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. And the last one was, I don't know anything. Okay, so Dunning-Kruger is basically that thing where you get to where you're really, really good at it, and turns out there's a lot you don't know, and you recognize that. So again, this doesn't mean if you think you're smart that you're stupid. I don't want to put more into this or not, but give yourself credit. You might be doubting your efficacy because you're really good at your job. Pay attention to your work-life balance. So this is the number one question I get with my schedule. I will be home 2 days this month. So people are like, how can you do that? Well, because I don't have any kids at home anymore, and my girlfriend's meeting me in Vegas on Friday for DevOps Enterprise Summit. And she's been to Paris twice, and she's been to Australia with me, and she's been to Europe, so forth and so on. And so the work-life balance, again, is for you. But don't spend, all your time at work and then wonder why you get exhausted. So the next thing is talk to someone. And by this, of course, friends and stuff, but I really do mean professionally. If you're really burnt out, you can't figure out what's going on, please talk to a professional. It took me 3 years to agree to do this. 3 years and 1 divorce. Okay. They can actually recommend treatment. And this is the one that John Willis brought up to me that I was like, yeah, okay. If I fell down and broke my arm, I'd go to see a doctor. Okay. True clinical burnout is a medical issue. Please don't ignore it. It will get worse. And it can lead to clinical depression and a whole bunch of other stuff. Okay, so, friends and family and stuff as well, but again, they're not the same as a medical professional. On that note, listen to someone. Again, very blessed, privileged, use your term. There are people here today that I consider close friends because we started out as conference friends. They, I hope, know that they can call me at 3 a.m. any day. So know who those people are that you can call and who can call you. Tell the people who can call you, you can call me. Okay? But please understand that you're not a professional. Don't try to guess at cause and effect. And whatever you do, do not recommend treatment. A very good friend of mine was suffering from pretty bad burnout. It was apparent to everybody around him. Boss said, you know what? You just need to take a couple weeks off. I'm shutting down. He's, oh, no, that's not what I need. I'm shutting down your accounts. I'm making so you can't log in. I'm forcing you to take vacation. He was burnt out because he wasn't feeling very effective at his job. And his boss just told him, you're so ineffective, we don't even need you. Okay, it made it significantly worse. Luckily, a couple of us saw it and, before anything happened, but please don't recommend treatment. This is what professionals are for. That said, there's really good training that's inexpensive that you can do for your organization on how to recognize some of these things and how to recommend what people do. So mentalhealthfirstaid.org is a first aid class for mental health. So, how to put on brain Band-Aids. But it's important because it's training. And you can send a person on your team or a person in your org or something. It depends on your org size and everything. But like anything else, we don't hesitate to go get training on the latest language or read stuff online or whatever. Same kind of idea. Speaking of which, I'll leave this up for a while if you want to take pictures. This talk, John Willis' original talk, came out of a blog he did at the top, IT Revolution. I mentioned a second ago that I have a couple of people here that I consider close friends, and we started out as conference buddies. John had one that he would always see at a show in Los Angeles. And he went back there, and he's like, hey, where's so-and-so? Well, he killed himself 3 months ago. So that's where a lot of this came from. There's a couple TED Talks about it. Mind Garden is Christina Maslach and Michael Leader's site. Some of the InfoQ stuff, Harvard Business Review. I was lucky enough, again, to have some close friends I was able to share this with. Jeff is like, hey, careful, DevOps can make it worse if they misapply it. So again, I want to thank them for that. And with that, I will say thank you.